you doing, guys? Today we're gonna start up a little bit of a project that's out just a touch outside my wheelhouse, and that is sheet metal. One of the things I would like to try to do here is try to rectify the way this tractor, the little Mule, looks from the rear. Essentially, it looks really wide with the 416 gearbox and the 520 rear rims. The 857 C-pan just looks a little tiny. So what I want to do, or what I'm going to attempt to do, is I'm going to attempt to extend these fender pieces out to about the center of the tire. Now that's what the original C-pan on the 612 or tires that were on this tractor. So basically this distance from the center of the tire to this outer edge is about 1 3/4 inches. So I want to add about 1 3/4 inches to this fender to make it just kind of go out and look a little bit more stock. Now clearly the tops of the fenders are going to be a little bit wider looking, and to do that, a friend of mine was nice enough to give me a fender pan that is a good candidate for extension. And here it is. This one is in, it's in good shape overall, but it's a good candidate for what I want to do. It does have some rust. There's some little bit of rust holes here and there, so we're gonna have to fix all that. The one thing I did do to it already is I did pull out the seat stands that's spot welded to the bottom. It was already coming out, so I decided to just drill the spot welds, get it out of the way. The other thing I did already too, there's a pretty big crease right here. You can see the line. I just heated it up with the torch and then hit it with the hammer. This metal's fairly thick, so it can take some heat before it decides to warp. Also, there was a pretty big dent right here, so we heated that up, pounded it out the best I could. Well, obviously once I get this all put together, I'm gonna have a little bit of Bondo in it. There was also a couple little dents right here. Like this thing was caved in a little bit, so I straightened that out to match the other side. But as you can see from the exterior point of view, in other words what you would see, there's no extra holes. Obviously somebody drilled some holes here in the seat pan. So before I go cutting this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to weld up all the little tidbitty holes here that are not needed, get that all smooth. Going to flip it over, get the inside all good and clean here, and then I will show you how, or at least how I plan on cutting this and extending it. Alright, so after about an hour's worth of time, I got all the holes that are not needed filled in. They feel real good. I do have to keep an eye on my heat. I did overheat the sheet steel in a few spots right here and right here. They're both it's just a little tiny bit low, but in general I'm real happy with it. The underside looks just as good. All the holes are filled in. Most of these, if not all of them, are going to be covered by the seat stay once I put that, spot weld that back in. So I'm really not worried about that so much. I may drill out the spot welds on these two locator tabs. This is where it kind of holds the seat pan to the tower. The only reason why I'm going to take them off is I would like to clean underneath it, because eventually this thing's going to have to get painted in some sort of fashion, whether or not it's patinaed or custom or something, I don't know yet. But in general, that is all done, because these are the seat holes, so we're going to leave those in place. Now, when it comes to the fender, how am I going to extend these fenders? Essentially what I'm going to do is from this bend that basically lives this entire distance, I'm going to measure about 1/2 to 5/8 of an inch away from that, kind of like that fold in the steel, and I'll drop a line. It kind of goes like, at a diagonal, then it kind of follows this all the way across to the front, and then just take the die grinder and cut the fender right off. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with some, about 1 3/4 inch piece of sheet steel, and I'm just going to put it in place here, tack it to this, tack it to that, and that's what's going to create the extension of the fender. Now in the front here, there's really not a whole lot to worry about. There's no edge. Just come over, and then this will be just moved over. This area will just become a little bit larger. Obviously, the top of the fender will look a little bit thicker but not overly. The only thing I have an issue with is this lower section. There's like this bead roll for the body line. Obviously I'm gonna have to make this in multiple pieces. I'm gonna have to make a piece that kind of goes across the top. Then I'll have to make a piece for the bend, and then make a piece that goes to the bottom. So it's probably gonna be in about, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. But we'll get it straightened out. I think the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the layout on the cut and cut one of the fenders off. So I found the center line of the fender pan. Essentially from the underside, I measured from this edge to the edge over here, using this hole, the center hole, as like the lining up point. And then it was like 13 and 3/16, I believe was the halfway mark. Dropped this line, and then off of this center line I made my measurements to the cut line. Essentially what I did was I tried to keep it 3/8 of an inch from the top of the bend, basically all the way down, up and across. Now this, I measured and did this side first, and then I measured and tried to duplicate that side on this side, and it came out okay. It was a little bit of a pain in the neck, but overall, as you can see, those tape lines are pretty close, so I'm real happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead, and I think I'm going to lop this fender off first. And then basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this fender off, and then I'll make the first patch panel, tack weld that in, so that way I can kind of keep my eye on both, you know, this side. As I'm building this side, I can keep an eye on the original side so I can copy it pretty close. From there, I'll go ahead and cut the other side off and start building it, you know, kind of like what this side looks at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this tape off, take my die grinder, and cut it off with the die grinder. With the first fender cut off, you can start to see where I'm kind of going with this. That's about 1.75 inches. It's about the width of extension I want to have. And as you can see, I'm not trying to alter the overall look of the fender pan. I want it to still look like a stock fender pan, but obviously it's going to have a little wider top here. So what I'm going to do next is, obviously I dressed the edges since I cut it off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cardboard template from, I don't know, right about here to right about there. I'm going to fit that piece of sheet steel into place, so that way I can just tack that in. I might put a temporary brace on the front or the back. I might do it in the front. On the back side, do a temporary brace just to hold this whole thing into place, and then go ahead and cut the other fender off and do the same before I make the next patch, so that way I can get the overall width and look that I'm looking for before I actually kind of finish off one side. So let me go ahead and make the template, cut the piece out, and I'll show it to you before I go burning it in. With the first slice and dice completed, I got my patch panel in place. It probably could have fit a little better, but it's going to be fine. One thing I don't know if I'll be able to show you, but I'm going to attempt to show you, is right here, if we take my ruler, where's the 16th? Okay, so right there, if I measure from the level down to the original pan, we got about a 1/16 of an inch of spacing. This line right here is going to be the cut line. So if I go like this, we have about a 1/16 of spacing, so I know that's fairly flat. All of this is in place. I got it held in with the magnet, which is not the greatest for welding, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to obviously move the level. I'm going to tack it in 2 places here, then I'll take this off, tack it in 2 places, and then I'll kind of work and tack it into place going down, because there is a little bit of an arc here, so we'll arc it with the heat. And then I think the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the back piece in. As you can tell, it's lined up pretty good. I'm real happy with that. Now the front is definitely going to need a little bit of work because these corners don't quite match, so we'll have to probably re-arc this a little bit. No big deal. It's actually quite simple. Vice grips and a welder, you can do anything really. So we're going to get this all tacked in, and I'll be right back. All right, so with the corner patch put in, I was going to put this lower patch, but I still got to figure out how I'm going to make this bead. So I said, the heck with that. Plus, by putting the corner patch in, it really strengthens the whole thing up. But let's take a look at what we have. As you can see, this came out pretty good. I just made a cardboard template of the corner. Then I took a piece of steel and cut it to shape. And then I used my torch and a hammer on my piece of railroad track. And I was able to form it into place. Everything seems to be real smooth. I mean, you can see how these joints are pretty good. They're flat. I don't have a whole lot of warpage going on, which is highly impressive. If we look at the lower edge here, looks like that lower edge is going to work out just fine. So I'm pretty psyched about that. And as I was working it, this side over here, actually, it doesn't even look that bad. I mean, I might have to do, it's a little bit, have to do a little something to make that look a little smoother, cleaner. But overall, I'm real happy with that. I'm going to get this all put into place first, and then I'll deal with the bottom at the very end. But for right now, I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and, what I'm going to do, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the old fender pan off the other tractor, and then let's put this on, and we can see how this is going to theoretically lay out. And there it is. I think it looks good. I'm happy with this. As you can tell, the left side is the stock 857 with fender. Obviously, the one on the right is the one that I've stretched. I did add a little bit of blue tape where the hole is, or the piece I haven't put on in the back, just so you can get a better visual of how it looks. And I think it makes the tractor look better, not as kind of quirky. As you can tell, it's laid out pretty good. You know, the whole thing laid out pretty nice. I'm real happy with it. Just got to cut a piece here in the back, fill that in. And obviously there's a piece here in the front that needs to be filled in. I was going to do that today, but I'm just burnt. So I think for now, that is where I'm going to leave it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead on another day, obviously, go ahead and make the arc, put the front piece in, get that done. So this thing is basically going to be tacked from the front of the fender all the way to this back point. Then I'm going to lop off the second fender, extend it to the same place, you know, the front, the top, and just over the back, and then make the two back pieces at the last moment, only because I want to figure out how I'm going to deal with this body line. All right, guys, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all your viewership. I hope you enjoyed this little start of a sheet metal project. And as always, like, share, and subscribe if you could, and have a great day.